Welcome to the Photography Opinion Podcast. We discuss all things photo, video, and camera related. I'm Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op.
Today on Photo Op, Ben and I are going to talk about something that we found on an F-Stoppers article. 10 things which most photographers don't have, but probably should. We have some strong feelings about this list.
Yes, we do.
And we're going to break down the list with our thoughts, and we're also going to add on to it some things that we personally think that most photographers don't have, but probably should. So let's get right to it.
All right, I just want to interject with like things that I hate about these roundup lists and things that I hate about these big websites that just post content is none of the content's good. I would rather that a site post once a day or once a week rather than 15 times a day and it's all garbage. So some of the things on these lists, like a gray card, that's like literally the first thing that I bought after my camera. Like a lens cleaning kit. If you went to Costco, your camera kit probably came with a lens cleaning kit. Like camera strap. Raise your hand if you don't have a camera strap. If you're raising your hand, you're lying because every camera comes with one. Spare memory cards and batteries. Like who wrote this list?
Yeah, I'm sitting on probably half a dozen camera straps myself.
Like spare batteries. Yeah, you can't shoot a whole day on one I don't, especially if you're like a Sony shooter, you need like 8 batteries. Like
not anymore.
Oh my yeah, so I feel like these big sites that just turn out as much content as possible, they put little thought into what the content actually is. And so this article is titled Things You Probably Don't Have, and I looked at this list. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I had all of this year one. And by now, of course, I have it all. This is a stupid list. So we're gonna think of our own things that you probably don't have, but should.
Yeah, we're gonna come up with our own list.
Because it just hurts me so much just reading these. Ugh.
I think they have what, one thing on their list that probably
they have
is
one thing on their
valid?
list that we agreed with,
Yeah,
which is a 5-in-1
so.
reflector.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know what the difference between a reflector and a 5-in-1 reflector. A 5-in-1 reflector has black and white on one side, but then it's got a zipper that it unzips, and if you turn it inside out, it's got gold and silver. I very rarely use the gold, but you can use it to warm up your portraits, but most of the time, if I'm shooting with that in addition to flash, I want it to match the daylight of the flash, or especially if I'm getting strong sun. So I usually don't use the gold side. But the side that I do use a lot is if you just, the fifth one, so you got black, white, silver, gold, and the fifth one is you just take off the cover completely and then you have a diffuser. So you put that in between your subject and the sun, and they still get all of the light that the sun is shining on their face, but it's just this beautiful, soft, diffused look, and it looks like you're using a big softbox.
Yeah, pro tip, that works great for video lights too. Like you can put a light behind it, like in a studio, just clamp it somewhere, put a harsh light behind it, and it makes it a nice, big, soft light.
Yeah, if you have just like a really cheap light, or if you have one of those like theater style video lights, just putting up a big diffusion panel like that works wonders. You don't actually have to get fancy softboxes.
Yeah, 5-in-1 reflectors are really reasonably priced.
I think I have like 4 of them in various sizes. Like
yeah,
they're a
here.
fantastic thing. I do have one that is maybe like the size of your face. When it's folded up, but then it unfolds to about 2 feet, I think. And that just stays in my camera bag, and I carry it with me everywhere. But when I go on a shoot where I specifically need a bigger one, I have one that's, maybe the size, a little smaller than a tire, and that folds out to extremely large, and I use that sometimes too. So yeah, 5-in-1 reflectors, only thing on their list that is worth mentioning.
Yeah. Definitely get one if you don't have one already, or more than one.
What are some other things you can think of that people probably don't have but should?
Man. So many things. One thing right off the bat that kind of helps with all sorts of other equipment is a multi-tool of some form. I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
super handy. I personally have a Gerber shard on my keychain, and I've used that like 1,000 times a year. I've had one on my keychain for years. I will continue to have my keychain on one on my keychain for years. And it's a multi-tool that also you can get through airport security. It doesn't have like a knife on it, but
I
it's
will
got
actually. I did a video about things that I have in my camera bag, so I will link that in the show notes. I have a video that shows, and I think there are links to the Gerber shard and the other multi-tool that I use in there as well.
awesome. Yeah, so Gerber shard. If you are flying, that's a good one to have, just because it's got two different screwdrivers on it, a Phillips and a flathead. It's got some ability to kind of lever things. It's a nice little multi-tool. I like to carry a Leatherman Wave around as well, which I know is a lot bigger, a lot heavier, but it gives you 14, 15 tools in it. It just
I
comes
also
in
have a
handy.
Leatherman that's just extremely old, so I have no idea what style it is. But yeah,
Oh
just
yeah.
having a multi-tool comes in handy.
Some kind of multi-tool, whichever one you like best or fits best for your situation. But
And some
multi-tools in
just feel
general.
better in your hand.
Yeah, right. Like I went through a couple different multi-tools before I landed on the Wave as the one that I like the best. But yeah, your mileage may vary. Don't necessarily say the Wave is the only way to
Yeah.
go. Just the one I like.
Something else that I have in my camera bag. So the camera bag that I have, I know it's a little bit clunky when I'm doing, weddings or something like that. But for most portrait shoots, it's really nice because it was actually designed as a hiking backpack. So it has a rain cover protection built into it. There's actually a little secret pouch that you can pull out the rain cover and then flip it around the bag.
Very
So
cool.
I have that for my camera bag. I have that for whenever I use my Think Tank speed belt. Every single pouch on the speed belt has its own rain cover protection under the bottom. And then hidden in another like secret fold in my camera bag, I just have a very cheap. It basically is just a like a ballistic nylon type sleeve where
Mhm.
with cinch straps, so you can cinch the front and cinch the end. That was my first one. It only cost like $30, and it does a decent job of rain protection. But I've
Mhm.
also upgraded since then of like when I'm going out and I know it's raining, I have one of those big clear ones so you can see your camera through it, and you stick a hand in each hole and then you can hold your camera, and
Mhm.
it's perfectly insulated from like rain or hail.
Mhm.
And then it's got a big strap around the front that you can like tighten down on the lens hood of like your 7200 or something like that.
And if you're really on a budget, I mean, just like a garbage get bag can sometimes work. Like you might have to tear a hole in it or
Yeah.
modify it in
Well,
some way. But like throw a garbage bag. I mean, they crush up really tiny. Throw a
that's
garbage
true.
bag in your
Yeah,
camera
the
bag,
one
and
that
you'll
I
have one.
have, I'll see if I can find a link, see if
Hmm.
they even make them anymore. But yeah, it's so small, and it just has a cinch strap on either side so that you can tighten it so that rain doesn't get in
Hmm.
between like the bag. But it's just this little bag that it crinkles up so tiny. Yeah, definitely worth
Super cool.
having if something flies in and you can't, you're not prepared for the rain. It's great
Yeah,
having that.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
what other things should we have on this list?
Well, one of the things that I carry with me all the time is actually a mini ball head. Now, granted, I shoot video a lot, but I actually have it right here. It's so key to me. It is literally on my desk. Here we go. It is this mini ball head. This was part of the reason I carry this is because this is a gift from my dad. He used it for his pretty much his entire career as a photographer, and it was bequeathed to me. But why I carry a mini ball head? Well, one, it's just awesome to have that extra flexibility for adding things to the top of your cold shoe. So you can see this particular one is a cold shoe adapter. You can also unscrew this and attach it to a normal tripod screw as well. But if you have an external monitor or some sort of flash unit like a Speedlight or really anything that you'd
You
want
can
to put
aim it.
on your
Yeah.
cold shoe, you can aim it instead of being stuck with just facing forward, at a exact horizontal angle. You can aim it, and that seems like a little kind of silly thing, but really these are so small. It's so easy to throw in your bag. And I use it constantly. Like I'm going to use this for 30 years as well, I'm sure. So get a good little one that really holds. There's some really, really cheap ones that don't hold the ball very tightly. So make sure you don't go too cheap. But get a nice little one and throw it in your bag, and I promise you'll use it a lot more than you expect.
Something else kind of in that same vein that I have that I don't carry with me that often, but every once in a while I have shoot where I'm like, oh, I should grab that. It is this little bracket that actually screws into the bottom tripod mount of your camera that gives you 3 extra cold shoes.
Nice.
So that you can mount more stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can use the hot shoe of the actual camera for like a flash or a trigger, but then I can use the cold shoe to mount like a microphone or a monitor.
Yeah, super useful for video shooting. Yeah.
Yeah,
To have something like that.
Let's see. Oh, something else. When you're shooting video, especially, video shooters use more filters, generally speaking, than photo shooters because they use polarizers, they use ND filters. There are so many things that photo shooters use, or video shooters use.
Yeah, got to keep that shutter speed at the right, setting.
Absolutely for the motion blur, which photographers don't care about as much. But if you're the type of shooter who uses a lot of filters, having a filter wrench, because if you ever drop or impact the front of your camera, that filter can get stuck on that lens, and then it'll be very, very hard to get it off without actually just like breaking it. So filter wrench is a little circular thing that you just kind of pinch and grab, and it gives you a little extra torque to get those stuck filters off of your lens. So yeah, maybe like you'll break the threads of the filter as you're pulling it off, but you're breaking a $30 item instead of a $1,000 item.
Yeah, a lot easier to stomach.
Yeah, if you're the type of photographer that uses filters on your camera, that's a good little item to have.
Agreed.
What are some other things?
Oh, well, one, this is kind of, this depends a little bit on your camera, but one thing that I always carry in my bag, even though it is actually kind of heavy, is a decent-sized USB battery. Now, increasingly, cameras are allowing you to charge their batteries by plugging the camera into USB. Your your mileage may vary. Your camera might be one of those that's capable of that and might not. If it's not capable of that, it's still useful for charging up your phone. Sometimes you're going out on a shoot, you're kind of far from cell service, your phone works really hard to connect to those towers and burns through battery really fast, or maybe you're using an app that
like
has
a Sunseeker app,
your notes or Sunseeker app, or you're using your phone potentially a lot during a shoot
as a tool,
as an actual tool, and your phone will burn through the battery much faster than usual, and a USB battery backup is really handy for that. There are all sorts of sizes and capacities, so choose just like a good manufacturer. Something like somebody like Anker is a good, solid, consistent manufacturer of USB batteries, but choose one that has a couple outputs, that's got a decent capacity. They make some gigantic ones, so don't go too crazy because it becomes a lot to load.
Then it becomes heavy, and then you won't want to carry it.
And then you won't want to carry it. So don't go too big, but one with at least a couple outputs, so maybe you and maybe an assistant you have can charge off of it simultaneously is really handy. And at best, you can recharge your camera if you need it. You can charge your phone. At worst, you can just charge your phone, but that's still enough, in my opinion, to be worth carrying a USB battery.
For sure. Some non-camera related things that I can think of. This is especially good when I shoot weddings, but really when I do any kind of portraits. Have a lint brush, hairpins, hair ties, clothespins, safety pins, have mints. All of these things. Every wedding season, I just buy a new box of safety pins, and I go through nearly the entire box every wedding season because I'm not gonna ask for that back. But like it comes in super handy of like, oh shoot, this ripped. Here, let me pin it for you. Or if you're working on a portrait shoot and the model's shirt is a little saggier than you want it to be, you can just kind of tighten it up and pin in the back. So yeah, so many different things you can do with that. If they have a pet, getting that pet hair off with a lint brush.
Along the theme of clamping items like clothespins.
Oh, like little A-clamps.
Yeah, clamps are super nice to have in your bag. I keep at least a couple in my bag, even if I'm not necessarily planning on rigging something, you just never know when they'll come in handy for attaching something to a tripod, or maybe you have a reflector and you were planning on holding it, but really it'd be nice if you could just clamp it to something, clamp it to a branch, or clamp it to a stand or something at a different angle than you were expecting, or in a different way than you were expecting. Having a clamp that allows you to do that quickly and easily is hugely valuable, and you can get pretty small clamps that hold quite well. So you don't have to buy some giant clamp. You can just have a couple small clamps, and that should tide you over if you need
Yeah.
it.
I definitely have, like, in studio, I have those big A clamps,
Which are great in studio.
And then I also have like the Manfrotto style super clamp, but I just have like, you can get them at like Harbor Freight of like a couple for $1 of just the really tiny A clamps.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Like the tiny plastic A clamps, you can get a bag of them at Harbor Freight for a few dollars. And then just throw a couple in your bag. It's really worth doing.
A couple of other things that are definitely worth mentioning. Gaffer's tape. If you're doing a little bit of a bigger set, anytime you run a cable, you're going to want to have gaffer's tape on your set because you don't want to have any tripping hazards. So this is less so of like you're out at a park, doing something, and more of like you went to a client's conference room and you're setting up a headshot session. And like, if you need to run a cable, tape it down.
And specifically gaffer's tape, not duct tape.
Oh dear Lord, no! Never ever buy duct tape ever again. Stop
it. I know paying for gaffer's tape sucks. Like gaffer's tape is a lot more expensive.
It's true.
It sucks, but it is so much better in every way. It's so much stronger. It sticks better. It is well worth it.
It doesn't leave residue is the most important.
Leaves residue, and one little thing, Gaff tape comes in many different sizes. So just because everybody carries the standard
1 inch
size,
and 2 inch and 4 inch, and
exactly. So I actually, just as like a last ditch backup, if I forgot like a full roll of Gaff tape, is I have a little roll that's about about the size of just my fingers, like that, of 1 inch Gaff tape, and I have used that so many times. It's now a permanent addition to my bag because it saved me. Like I keep it in there so consistently that I actually don't add it to my bag when I leave. It just lives in my bag, and I forget that I have it in there, and then I'll be at a shoot and think, oh, I could really use some Gaff tape right now. Oh yeah, that's right, I have that little roll, and it's saved me so many times. It's great, really. Like, at the very least, get a little roll and keep it in your bag and forget it's there until it comes in handy, and then it is so worth it. You'll be patting yourself on the
am
back.
adding that to my shopping cart right now.
Awesome.
Because I have those big 2 inch rolls that
which are great.
See.
If you have those, that's the ultimate.
If I forget to bring it with me. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, what are some other things? Oh, if you're shooting with models, or if you're shooting like architecture and you don't want building security to get you, have some kind of contract. So if you're shooting with a model, have a model release. If it written is perfect, but you can use an app. I actually don't think that the app that I use is like a thing anymore. I just keep using it because it already got installed on my devices, but I don't think you can get it now. So I won't even mention it. But yeah, you can get apps for model releases, or you can just do paper model releases. If you're shooting architecture, and especially if you're shooting it like for a client or a newspaper or something, building security is probably going to hassle you and say, hey, you can't do that. So having a written piece of paper that's like, hey, I'm allowed to be here. Because the thing is, like, there's no accreditations for being a photographer. Like, there are no actual official things. Like, yeah, you could like go get a permit if you're doing an actual shoot or something, but most of the time, just having some form of accreditation or permission or permit, even if you write it yourself, like Ron from Parks and Rec.
Some sort of I'm here for a reason.
I'm here for a reason. I can do what I want. Having something with you gets you out of trouble 9 times out of 10. So that's a good thing to have in your bag.
especially when you have the next thing on our list in your bag, which will gather more
What's the next
attention, a
thing on our list?
tripod.
Oh, I was gonna say we have a list. Where's the list?
Well, true. We're this is a pretty free form list, but you will especially need a written form of some kind if you have a tripod. That's going to attract building security like none other.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. Tripod. So the thing is, like, you can have a $15,000 Leica professional camera like none other, and they will just think you are a tourist.
Yeah.
But if you stick down a $500 Costco camera on top of a tripod, all of a sudden you're a professional photographer because you have a tripod. So yeah. Having a tripod is a great thing to carry with you if you can find a nice travel-sized one and it's something that you end up using a lot. But yeah, definitely have some kind of written contract or written permission if you're going to plop down a tripod somewhere.
On the tripod front, having just something, in my experience, is better than nothing. One of the the thing that you see a lot of people carrying around is those like Gorilla Pods, which work pretty well. I mean, they're not going to get you far off the ground, but I will say I've been watching the travel tripod market recently just because I wanted a carbon fiber travel tripod, something that's really can compact, very small, and is very, very light so that I will actually carry it. And boy, carbon fiber is getting so inexpensive right now. So if you've been like me where you put off buying a nice small travel tripod for a long time because you're like, I'd only really want carbon fiber for the weight and for the other benefits of carbon fiber, but also that you just said it's too expensive. I'm not going to even bother. It's just way too expensive. They're hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. They're getting so inexpensive. I'm seeing some really good tripods for approaching $100 made out of carbon fiber.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, take a second look at that market. I just bought one recently. I'm not going to recommend it here because I'm not...
you haven't tested it.
I haven't tested enough to feel super confident, but I will say my initial impressions are that, wow, inexpensive carbon fiber tripods are now really good and really worth your attention. If you can afford,
I know a bunch of years back you helped me buy a tripod. I want to say this was like 6 or 7 years ago. I spent like $300 on it, and it only lasted me for like 6 months to a year before I stopped being happy with it. So
yeah, tripods are there. There seems to be a lot more competition and a lot more innovation, especially in the kind of budget or at least good bang for your buck area of the market. And this one that I picked up recently, I mean, does it get the tallest? Well, no, but is it super light? Is it something that I literally actually am carrying regularly because it's so light and so small? Yes, and that's kind of ultimately what matters. So definitely take a second look on that space if you've just written it off before now, because boy, I was really surprised at what I found and how good and how inexpensive these things are getting.
That's awesome. I think the very last thing that I will mention is that if you are a speedlight photographer or you use flash all the time, then you are, of course, going to have a speedlight. But if you are a natural light photographer, I still think it's worth picking up a cheap speedlight. And I know I have a video on my YouTube channel where I talk about speedlights. That video is actually quite old. I think I would have new recommendations today. This is not a speedlight review episode, so not really going to get into it, but you can pick up a really high quality speedlight for anywhere between 80 to 120 bucks. And what if you are a natural light photographer, my recommendation is you don't even have to get super fancy and get triggers and stuff. Just put it on your camera and then swivel the head and bounce it. You can bounce it off that 5-in-1 reflector that you're carrying. You can bounce it off a building wall. You can, if you're shooting a wedding, you can have a groomsman take off their jacket and bounce it off their white shirt. Like there are so many things
creative.
that you can do to just up your game and up your photos, and sometimes you need it because you literally cannot take a good photo. There's not enough available light. So if you get stuck in that situation, having a cheap speedlight by your side, it works wonders. It can save a life.
And it's a great learning opportunity for nothing else. Like even if you're just shooting for fun, you're just it's more of a hobby than it is a business. Like having a speed light, even if you're a natural light photographer, just
It
having
opens
that,
opportunities.
It opens opportunities, and it lets you experiment and learn, and maybe eventually you aren't just a only natural light photographer, because you're enjoying yourself, you're learning, you're more confident with the Speedlight, and now you can start applying it to client work. So it's well worth having and experimenting with. It is not the financial burden to get into that it used to be.
That's true. It used to be hundreds of dollars, and now
Yeah.
for less than $100,
Yeah.
you can definitely get a good one. So, I am definitely my go-to is to use a flash, but this spring, the last couple of shots that I've done, I barely even pulled it out if at all, just because we go out, the light is perfect. So, yeah, it's maybe not all the time, but just having one in your bag, it's worth having. So.
Definitely.
So I think that's a pretty good list of things that you should have in your bag that maybe you don't. We'll put links to some of these things where appropriate. But yeah, we really appreciate you listening to this episode. If you have any ideas, actually go and leave a comment on whatever platform of choice. If your podcasting platform doesn't allow comments, go find this episode on YouTube and leave a comment with what would you recommend that people should put in their camera bag.
Yeah, and especially if you've got follow up that you'd like us to talk about or related to this topic, send us an email at hello@photo-op.show. That'll get it right to us, and maybe we could do a follow-up on this someday. Maybe we're missing some things that are really useful and that people have great ideas about, and we should talk about. So we would love to do that. Shoot us an email, post a comment so that we can see that input, and we would be very pleased.
Absolutely. And very last thing before we sign off is we are a couple episodes in now. So if you like this show, share it with a friend. Tell someone about us. That really helps grow the show, helps us get more people sending in more questions so we can give you more content. So we really appreciate it.
And if your platform has reviews, if you'd shoot us a review, that would be great. That is very helpful.
So thank you so much for listening. And what are we talking about next time?
Kind of a callback to our RAW versus JPEG episode. We're going to talk about the next stage of that. What resolution do you actually need?
Ooh, megapixels are all the rage, but how much do you actually need?
How many are actually worth your time and money? So next time, what resolution do you actually need? It's going to be a great one.